Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually the afternoon in Melbourne, but it's probably not the afternoon where a few other people are coming from. So it's definitely the morning in Perth. We've got a number of people joining us in Perth and a number of different people joining us from around the country, but it's clicked over 1 o'clock Melbourne time. So we'll give everyone probably another 30 seconds to come in and then we will get started. But if you're just joining us, welcome. Welcome to our special webinar, Mastering Profit Through People, brought to you by Profit Master Global Outsourcing. Let's just give everyone another 20 seconds or so to come in. We've also got a couple of other panel members that are going to join us very soon as well. So I know one's going to be about 10 minutes late. We're waiting for one to come in, so the timing's not as bad. All right, there's a few more joining us, which is brilliant. So look, I think we'll kick off, given it's 1:01. We've got plenty to get through. So welcome to a special webinar. We're calling it Mastering Profit Through People. It's a special webinar that we've put together and it's brought to you by Profit Master Global Outsourcing. My name's Paul Jansz, in case you're not sure who I am, and I'll be your host for today. Now, today's webinar, it sort of follows a successful 2023 Profit Master Conference, where a group of special individuals, most are going to be on the screens here, had the opportunity to come to Manila, and then we did a little visit up to Clark as well in September. And it's also on the back of what we've done for probably the last 2 years, Rich. Well, I'll introduce you to Richard Croaker very soon, but Rich and I also did a special podcast series, and our podcast series was called Mastering Profit Through People as well. So we've done 2 of those particular series as well. So if you're into your podcasts and wherever you get them, I know whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever, do a search for Talking Numbers, and it's called Mastering Profit Through People. Look, we're going to be here for probably the next 40 to 45 minutes. All you guys that are continuing to join us, you've got the ability, you've got your Q&A bar there. If you've got any questions to ask our panel, please use the Q&A bar to do that. Now, before I get to our panel, I would like to introduce you and welcome Richard Croaker, our CEO and founder of Profit Master Global Outsourcing. Rich, how are you?
Hey, mate, how are you?
Yeah, brilliant.
I'm one of the ones in Perth, and it's just on coffee time. So.
Yeah, what is it? Are we at like 3 hours behind in Perth now?
To you, it's 3 hours.
Yeah.
See, James has just joined us. You're in Perth as well, I think. But so he's from Melbourne. I'm from Gold Coast, so it's 2 hours to me.
Yes.
And also Michael and Morgan. It's. I was speaking with my secretary this morning. The trying to fix the time zones has just been crazy.
I can only imagine, because I know when Melbourne goes to daylight saving and then there's an hour difference between all the stuff that we do in Brisbane, it's chaos in my calendar. So I can only imagine with you being in Perth and then Melbourne and then Gold Coast, which we'll leave behind. Now, mate, I'm sure you're very proud of what you saw in September. A lot of Australian firms visiting the Philippines, most for the first time. I know I was there for the first time. How was that for you?
Look, it was fantastic, Paul. It's not the first time that we've done it. We did have business trips to the Philippines prior to the COVID pandemic, and then they were put on the back burner for a little while. And we wanted to really do something this year that gave us a chance to showcase not only Profit Master and the office facilities and the staff that we have up there, but also to showcase some other associated organisations that we've got with us. And it was just fantastic to have the sponsors with us, and I'm sure you'll introduce those guys in a moment. But it was great because we had double the number of people that we'd had there previously, and we had tremendous support, not only from the people who were there, but the sponsors. I think we're really able to see what we're doing and how that relates to what they're doing, and then as a result of that, we're able to demonstrate to our clients and the other people who are there what we actually do. It was a great experience for me. And as you know, we were at the Marriott Hotel. We had a fantastic venue. Our management team came down from Clark to meet the guys, and I remember sitting out around the pool, and we were all starting to wonder whether it was going to rain that night. And they had the Profit Master backdrop behind us all sitting around the pool. And I looked down from my room before I came down, and I thought to myself, "Wow, I'm just so happy with what we've been able to do here, and to have everybody come along and have a look at it was just, I really felt proud for the organisation, and I felt very happy to be there.
Yeah, well done, well done. And I agree, that dinner outside by the pool was absolutely outstanding. Now, what you've created in the Philippines has been outstanding. You're moving into your 10th year next year, and I know there's a few things planned for obviously the 10-year anniversary. To obviously people that don't know about you, why don't you tell us a little bit about the business? And more importantly, I think, tell us why other professional service firms are choosing to work with ProfitMaster.
Yeah, well, we're not the biggest in the Philippines. There's a number of other colleagues that we have who are working in the same space as we do, in the outsourced administration services for Australian companies. Look, I've been doing it, as you mentioned, for about 10 years. I've been going up there, several times a year and really working to hone the business, the structure, and in conjunction with our management team, the culture, and the operations. And I think probably the things that make us quite different are, firstly, what we focus on. So we don't pretend to be all things to all people. We're definitely focused in the finance professional sector and the administration areas. So we work principally with accountants. We work with financial planners. We work with mortgage brokers. They would be the main areas that we work with. But alongside that, we're also working with other companies pretty well across any discipline, where they need internal accounting services or bookkeeping services, or maybe just administration services. So that has actually taken us. In fact, today I met with a mining company over here in Perth. That's taken us to some people who are doing project administration and costings and stuff like that. So, but principally we focus on the professional finance sector. And I think probably what makes a difference is different there is the fact that I am actually a chartered accountant. So I am a partner in a firm in Australia. I hold a practicing certificate with the institute, and I've got many years' experience working within the profession. And how that's played out into the outsourcing business that we have is that, we understand what accountants and what the profession needs in their outsourced staff. And some other things, for example, internet security. We've spent an enormous amount of money this year just making sure that our internet security is at the standard that we need to be. And James Hay is with us today, and it was lovely to have James over there, and also the guys from Practice Protect. But CT Group particularly came up to have a look at the business up there, and I know that James was, very satisfied with the level of security that we provide up there, and that is important to me, coming from an organisation such as CT Group, to say that, hey, look, we meet the standards of the profession. In actual fact, CT Group tomorrow is speaking at the conference that I'll be at, and James's co-director Anton is one of the speakers at that conference. So internet security is enormous to us, and I mean, in light of the internet security failures that we've had over the last, like Australia has had over the last little while, the profession needs to really understand what we have there. So that's probably number one. Number two, the point that I make, the fact that I am a professional, the fact that we do have a very high level of internet security, and the other things are more to do with the staff themselves. We have a very high retention of staff. We've got people who've been with us 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. In fact, one of our staff has a continuous relationship with us leading up to 8 years. And that is quite unique in the outsourcing sector. It's hard enough within the profession to keep somebody on board for 8 years, but we've built a culture around retaining our staff, and that's another important thing, because it means that when you're investing in training and when you're investing in your staff, that you're not having to repeat it time and time again when you lose your staff. And probably the final thing is that within the Philippines, we are a grade 1 employer over there, and that means that we're certified across not only the employment requirements of the Philippines, but across all the requirements of people in Australia as well. So many of our people attending here today will know that just because you're employing overseas doesn't mean that you have not got obligations relating to that employment. And the one that comes to mind is modern slavery. But as a grade 1 employer, we not only comply and have been audited to comply with the tax obligations in terms of paying tax, but also with the Phil Health, Social Security, Huggy Big, or the Home Mutual Development Fund. Our employment processes, our employment standards have already all been audited, and we earned that grade 1 employer status about 6 years ago.
Yeah,
sorry, that's a ended session there, mate, but there you go.
That's okay. And I think it's important to touch on that, because I think sometimes, when we're comparing apples and apples, they might look the same, but they're not the same. And I'm, having the, sort of doing the amount of work that I do with accounting firms, or sort of the financial planning market, or even the, I don't know, the brokering market, when you're trying to look at cost, it's not always about cost. Sometimes it is about the value, and things like that happened last week with Optus. I don't know how many Optus customers are on board at the moment, but I'm sure you would not have been happy on last Tuesday. So I think you having those key elements of your business, which I know James may talk about as well shortly, what's important, and some of the frameworks that need to be, that we need to be aware of moving forward, are really important. The retention of staff, super important. That you are a chartered accountant, super important. And I think those the grade 1 employer, again, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's hard to say, and this has been recorded, so I need to be careful, that there's other companies out there that may not be paying their contributions to their people that they should be paying. So again, when you're comparing apples with apples, sometimes it's an apple and an orange. So making sure that you have that, and you've been around for 10 years also, is a massive tick for the amount of firms that I know that work with you and that have mentioned that to me. So again, congratulations to what you've done, mate.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All righty, let's get into this panel now. I'm missing Warwick at the moment, so we might just, while I'll introduce him, I'll just skip over him for a second. So let's get into this. So we've got Warwick Cavell. Warwick's joining us very, very shortly. I've got James Hay. It could be Warwick coming in now, I think, is it? Well, he's trying to connect. He's trying to do something. But he's coming in from a Sydney office as well. So we've got a few things going on there, but that's all right. He's trying to connect right now. So we've got Warwick Cavell, we've got James Hay, we've got Michael Partis, we've got Morgan Loudon, we've got Richard Croaker. We do have an apology. We have an apology from Jamie Beresford. Unfortunately, Jamie couldn't be with us. He was called to the US at the last minute. He shot me a note saying, mate, I may be able to get on. I may be at LAX airport. I'm on my way home. And I said, look, if you can get on, great. But at the same time, if you're at LAX, might be a bit loud as well. So he may join us, he may not join us, but he certainly sent his apology and appreciates everything that he's been doing with Profit Master. Gentlemen, just a quick little hello. How are we all? I suppose there's 6 of us online. You can all sort of talk at once, I suppose.
The world is a happy place.
The world is a happy place. So we've got people coming in from Sydney, from Perth, from Brisbane, from Melbourne. We've got probably every state and territory covered, which is a fantastic thing. Warwick, you with us, mate?
Yeah, I am. I think I am.
Hey, Warwick, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Richard, how are you?
What's that ANZ advertisement you got going in the background?
Yeah, take a look. You can guess what building I'm in, can't you, Richard?
Very good, mate. I'm probably going to start with you, Warwick. So off the back, and it was an interesting one, because for those of you that don't know, all of us were in Manila at the time, but Warwick wasn't expecting me to call him up on stage when I called him up on stage when we about to start the conference. He thought he was presenting later on in the day. When I called him up, he had to go into action mode. So it was actually very funny. We had a chat about that afterwards. Warwick, one of the things that you shared in Manila was a very powerful presentation. And I'm going to sort of quote this a little bit. As the trusted advisor, the art is not to sell to clients. Okay, and I know you do a lot of work in this space. Are you okay to go into a little bit of that and take us through your thought process here, and maybe provide to everybody online maybe 3 recommendations that they can start doing?
Yeah, happy to give that a bell. Thanks, Paul. So to me, there's a couple of reasons why I suggest that trusted advisors should never be selling. One is that as a trusted advisor, I want you to have my interests at heart. And if you're trying to sell me a product, then I'm starting to question, are you looking after yourself or you're looking after me? And so to me, I mean, if I went to a doctor's and the doctors tried to flog me some drugs, I would be out of there quicker than, lightning. Wouldn't stick around. I want the doctor to work out what's best for me. And that's not about selling. It's not about, so you're in the wrong conversation. To me, as a trusted advisor, if you're finding yourself in a position where you're trying to sell and convince the client of something, then you're in the wrong conversation. That's the first point. The second point to me is that you got to recognize the client doesn't actually want your services, right? That's not what they're buying. If I buy a Porsche or a Ferrari, that's what I want. But I don't actually lie in bed of a night time thinking of an insurance policy or a tax return or something like. It's not what I want. Or even a one-page plan. What I want is the benefits that flow from the service.
Yes.
So what I'm actually buying is not your service as per se. What I'm buying is I'm buying myself as a client, as your client, at some time in the future when my current problem is solved. So when I'm better off, if that makes sense to people. So that's what I'm actually buying. Your service is irrelevant. So if you're flogging your service, it's irrelevant. I don't want a health check. I don't want a one-page plan. What I want is the benefits that flow from a health check or a one-page plan. The benefit is me when I'm better off some point in the future. So to me, it's a fruitless argument. It's a fruitless exercise to be trying to sell health checks and stuff like that. It's just the wrong conversation. And as far as tips are concerned, so my tips are really quickly start from where the client is, not with a product or service. So don't start with a product looking for a solution, looking for a problem. So it shouldn't be a solution looking for a problem. You should be starting where the client is and finding out what's really impacting them and taking them on the journey from where they are. And that can be done with your next conversation. You don't need to be buying software. Don't get caught up with all this software stuff. That suits the business model of tech companies, right? They've got to sell software, but it takes you, a lot of money to buy it, 3 months to install it and training and all that sort of stuff. And then you still don't have the communication skills to be able to sell it. So, and I find that with a lot of accounting practices, leave it 12 or 18 months and you can hardly find a trace of the software that they've purchased. It's just not working. So start with your next conversation. You've got a client meeting next week. You're going to have a conversation one way or another. Is it going to be profitable? Is it going to be unprofitable? That's so start from that conversation. And to me, the third tip is that if you're going to unlock your full value to your client, then you need to start thinking about learning facilitative problem-solving skills, learning to solve problems when you are not the expert. So it's fine to be the expert when you're solving technical problems, but if you're looking to solve adaptive challenges, you cannot use technical problem-solving processes. So you need to use facilitative problem-solving, which are quite different. And as AI bites more and more, we're going to find more and more of the problems that we're facing in accounting or in the business world are going to be adaptive challenges. They're not going to be technical problems because AI is going to look after that. A lot of that. It's still happening. But I was reading a book the other day, and the guy said, well, doctors, for example, he's saying that going to the doctor will be a thing of the past because what you'll have in real time, you'll have a band on your wrist that'll have all your health stuff being monitored in real time live. And then when it picks up any anomalies based on your profile, not an average of profiles, but based on your profile, it will alert you as to what you need to do. You don't need to be going to the doctor to find out. You'll find out in real time. And he said that technology already exists today. And I'm thinking, even down to that level, the technical problems that most professions are facing will be radically impacted. And so more and more of the problems we face will be adaptive challenges. So you'll need to increase your skills in facilitative problem solving.
Well said, Mark. Well said. And look, I think one of the key things that you mentioned there that always comes back down to me, Simon Sinek always talks about people sell the what, but people buy the why. Okay, so if you haven't seen that, Google Simon Sinek, and he talks about a comparison between Dell computers and Apple computers, and exactly what sort of Warwick you just mentioned just then, a health check or a business plan, that is the what. Most people don't want to buy that. They want to buy the benefit. So what's the benefit of the business plan? What's the benefit of the health check? And sometimes, a lot of the coaching stuff I've done in the past as well has been just on that. Let's highlight what that is and let's market that. Let's try and communicate that. So, and that's not something that comes easy either. That's where coaching comes into it and what you've done in the past, which is brilliant. So well done, mate. Thank you. Again, please feel free to jump in at the stage if you've got any comments to anything else we're going to be doing. Just one of the other things I wanted to touch on as well as we continue to move on. Now, with Jamie not being here today, I'm actually running a cyber and tech strategy masterclass next week. Okay, so it's next Tuesday. Is that right, James? I think it's next Tuesday, where I've got 3 specialist panelists that are joining me as well. Jamie being one of them from Practice Protect. Obviously, he couldn't be here today because he's in transit from LA, but it's a nice little segue into our next guest from CT Group. James, hey, how are you?
Yeah, very well, Paul. Thanks for having me.
How's Perth, mate? It sounds like that we all should be in Perth as well, by the sounds of it.
I mean, weather's beautiful today, perfect the next. So yeah, it's lovely.
That's good. Mate, one of the things that you spoke about and you touched on, but I know we're talking about this next week as well in a little bit of detail. And I saw your podcast as well. Was it last week? So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about this Essential 8 framework that's coming into play.
Yeah, look, it's going to affect all businesses, but the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, or the ACSC, has launched effectively a framework around maturity modelling for protecting your client's data. So regardless of business or the client, it will provide an important framework for businesses to take into account of how they're securing client data. Obviously, Australia being a very data-rich climate or data-rich country, we're a prime target for a lot of these hacking events that we sort of see publicised more so in the last few years, but it won't be something that goes away anytime soon. So what the Essential 8 aims to do is to provide, an approach to securing your data internally. And for financial services firms, for legal firms, for any firm out there, it's important to understand what that looks like, but also what the requirements of your clients are going to be. So we're already seeing a huge amount of tender proposals our clients are working on in the insurance space, in banking, in financial services overseas, where you need to have certain protections in place to be able to submit tender data or documents. So part of this and this, maturity modeling is really open and transparent communication with your IT providers, understanding what's required and what's needed.
Interesting. And there's a date that's associated with this as well, isn't there?
July 1 next year, July 1, 2024. Realistically, it's not a compliance piece, but it is, a very important. It relies heavily on documentation. So it's a report. It's going to be an important part of working with your clients, but also ensuring that you're at a level that will open up more business for you as well.
Yes. And I think, again, we've got to start to get cleverer. I don't know if that's a word, but cleverer. I'll use it in the way that each business now, a lot of the businesses and the firms I'm talking to, I'm asking them, do they have a tech cyber strategy? And most of them going, oh, not really. That's what our IT guy does. Well, but I ask them, do you have one? Yes, you've got to be collaborating with your IT partner on that, but do you have one? Because there's so many things that you now need to consider. It's not just about handballing it on to your IT partner. Yeah, they'll probably take care of 90% of it. But like anything, if you've got a business plan, you've got a strategy for that, you've got to have a tech and cyber strategy as well. That's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I think it all comes down to communication. I mean, relationship management is an important part of any relationship you have with any of your vendors. And I think sitting down with them and understanding what, posture or security posture you currently have and where you want to be, it's always going to be about roadmap items and, a long-term development of that strategy. Included in that, it's imperative to have things like a business continuity plan, instant response planning and things like that just as a standard, just so a business is aware of if we're so heavily reliant on tech, but if your tech goes down, what is the steps to ensure that you're up and practicing again? As an IT provider, we focus heavily on our business as professionals, as should financial service professionals focus on, their core business. So making sure that we're both on the same page as to how we both do our core business is super important.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I'm looking forward to delving a little bit deeper into that next week as well.
I'll just drop in there again, Paul, if you wouldn't mind. Hey, James, how are you, mate?
Good, mate.
Yeah, lovely to see you. James, when we were in Manila, this was one of the key issues that was going around the room. We were talking about this, and it was quite. I could feel the vibe in the room when you started talking about this. A couple of things that I'm thinking of is there's not been a lot of information that's been rolled out about this so far. When do we expect to see it? And the other thing is it going to apply to all businesses, or will there be a staged implementation or something like that that means the bigger businesses will have to comply and the smaller businesses will come along later?
Yeah, it's a great question. Glad you asked. I can't say how they're going to, I guess, push out their data or the information from a government perspective. I know from an IT perspective, this framework has been changing over the last couple of years. It's been discussed, and it's a constantly evolving model. What I think you'll mostly see is clients being forced to talk about it with their IT provider based on engagements that they're having with their clients. So when we look down, I guess, the maturity modeling, again, it comes back to communication. All IT providers should really understand the security posture that their clients in, and be discussing it with their clients at this point. What we've been trying to do, and we've been talking about it since the start of the year, is trying to start bringing our clients into that roadmap to get them to the maturity levels they need to be. Certain clients are going to require a higher level. As I said, insurance, financial services, we're seeing a very high level of security required for certain tenders and certain clients. Most businesses, it's important just to understand what those maturity models look like, but also the time that it takes to implement. A lot of these licensed products or software products that get put in, essentially reinforcing your security posture, are very easy to implement. The documentation side and the management of that, and eyes on screen, is the phased approach that I believe most firms and most businesses need to start road mapping in and looking at the timelines that are appropriate. And to be perfectly frank with you, there's three maturity levels, or four maturity levels, I should say: a 0, a 1, 2, and 3. From what I'm aware, there's, I think, 87 government organizations that'll be at that maturity level 3, which is the highest level. And quite frankly, to get to that point will take a significant amount of time. I don't believe any Australian businesses would need to get to that point unless they are working with, Department of Defence or, some of the very high level security requirements out of government requirements. But getting to I guess, maturity level 1 or 2 by sort of July 1, I think, is probably the importance and what most firms should be talking with their IT provider about.
Interesting. And I think, so one of the things we're talking about next week is, let's call it the human element in that. It's probably a good little segue. Again, these segues are working really well. So Rich, staying with you for a second. I'm pointing that way, but hopefully you are that way. It's like the Brady Bunch, isn't it? It's like looking down and looking up. So Rich Croaker, just back to you. I know, again, you've worked really hard on, again, building teams, building your team. And I think most leaders nowadays are in that situation where, again, you spoke about retention just before. So important to continue that. So, mate, have you got sort of one of the things that you spoke about in Manila was building successful teams offshore. Are you okay to, again, just share a little bit about that, and then maybe even share 2 or 3 tips for the firms that are online?
Yeah, well, this is part of what I spoke about in Manila, that building an offshore team is not really that different to building your onshore team. The main difference from our point of view is that each staff member or each team of staff works for a different client. So you could have one staff member working for an accountant, and then you could have 10 staff working for a different accounting firm. So it's a little bit different in that sense. But the main things are basically the same. And, if I was probably going to put 3 on the table, and I did this when I was in Manila as well, I mentioned this, the first thing is get your recruitment right. And if you're working offshore, understand that you don't from Australia, you don't understand the different nuances of the candidates and the staff that you are recruiting when you're over there, when they are over there and working in Australia. So the first thing I'd say is probably allow your offshore recruitment team to find the best candidates for you and engage with the recruitment team early, so that they've got an understanding of exactly the role that you're wanting to fill. That not only goes down to the type of person that you want, it's the type of work that they'll be doing, the training that'll be expected, the training that'll be given, and so on and so forth. That'd be the first tip that I'd say. Probably the second tip that I would also say is to build a foundation of culture that gives the employee the chance to buy into a long-term relationship. So I mentioned that our firm over in Clark, I mean, we're about 100 staff over there, and we've got people who are coming towards 8 years of working in our company. And if you look at the group from 3 to 7 years, some of them are client-facing staff, and some of them are within our administration and management. But one thing that they all have in common is that they have bought into the culture that we have built over there, and the clients here in Australia have allowed the staff to buy into the culture here in Australia. So through regular meetings, through direct contact with team members. In actual fact, earlier this year, we had about 10% of staff were actually located in Australia, participating in work programs, training programs, and enjoying the culture and society over here. And that's the foundation that you're trying to build, giving them, the employee, a reason to buy into a long-term relationship, simply because the cost of retraining and rehiring is so expensive. And just probably the final thing I'd say is reward generously. And this doesn't matter whether it's in Australia or in the offshore environment. You touched on it earlier. Don't think that you've just got to go with the cheapest that you can find. That's not the right answer to getting the best staff. So I'd say reward generously. So pay a good salary to your staff, and then you will be rewarded generously in return. What you give, you get back.
Yep. Well said. Well said. And look, there's a lot of times, and you probably see it as well. This is probably an interesting one where, in terms of those, probably I'll ask you for what advice would you give? What advice could you provide to firms that may believe that they're not ready? There's a part of me that believes they'll never be ready, to be fair, but I always talk to them about create a plan and just get on with it. And you know what? You're going to make mistakes along the way. It's a bit like when we're learning to walk, we're going to fall over, but you get back up and you keep going. You know what? You might fall over again and then you learn to run. There's certain aspects to there, but I strongly believe in. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, this is where I think getting together in Manila was so valuable. I mean, the conference of getting everybody face to face was just so valuable. We've only spoken to James and Warwick so far, but I go back to what Warwick said, and it is, you've got to work out the why. If an accountant or a financial planner or a mortgage broker or a lawyer or whatever it is, if they haven't worked out the why that they want to do it, then forget it. You're not going to get there. So, some people will say, well, my processes are not right. Well, you've got to work out how the practitioner himself has got to work out how to get past that. That's to me, that's not really a reason, because technology is just so good nowadays. And it's not only the technology, but the information security is so good. The IT technical guys are so good that it creates a seamless relationship. If you want to sit side by side with a staff member and work out what they're doing, you can do it. Just like we are here now. It's not about that. I'd go back, to answer your question, I'd go back to what Warwick said, and you've got to work out the why. And when they work out that, everything flows from that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I think, that's, again, sometimes, Anthony Robbins, for those of you that are Robbins fans, I'm a big Anthony Robbins fan, have been for 20 years, but he talks about using pain as leverage. Okay, so if anyone's seen him, he talks about pain as leverage. Now, sometimes the pain element is, I've had enough, I'm doing too much work where, I don't know, I've got a firm of $1 million in fees and I'm doing $700,000 and I'm doing 90 hours. You know what? Maybe that's your pain as leverage. And you've got to turn around and say, right, there's too much pain involved here. what do I need to do next? What's my why? What will it give me if I actually find a team, not just one, but 2 and 3, and you obviously can increase it as you go? What would that do for my business? What would that do for my lifestyle? What would that do for my balance? What would that do for my mental health? And I know that's where a lot of firms also start. And, sometimes you've just got to jump in and doggy paddle until you can swim, So those elements there, that's why I'm a big believer in making sure you've got that as well. So well said, Rich. Well said. Now we've got to keep going. Morgan, welcome, mate. I'll come to you now. I know you guys at Blackbird Capital doing a lot of great things in the alternate lending space. Again, the boss, I know Stewie couldn't be with us today. Big shout out to Stewie Wilkinson. If you probably watched the replay. He couldn't be with us today, so you've come off the bench. Mate, the alternate lending space, it's become more and more popular. What can you share with us in terms of let's call it the do's and don'ts that you can share with our audience online?
Yeah, definitely. It has 100% become a lot more popular as an alternative to sort of bank or non-bank lending as well, especially in the smaller space. The biggest thing that I can think of is transparency. So in this one here for us, as Warwick was talking about, it's the why. It's about taking the broker or the referrer or the customer on the journey with you to find out the why. Why do they need alternative lending? What can we provide them? What service can we provide them that best suits the customer and ourselves as well? And taking them through that journey, because a lot of it is unnavigated territory for the lender as well. So I'll just give you a bit of an example. We are doing a loan at the moment, without going too much into it. It's against quite a large sum of Bitcoin. Obviously, there's a lot of rules and regulations against tax and everything along that as well. It's something that we haven't done before, but it's something that we're looking at doing. But it's something new to us as well. So we're getting advice from accountants, we're getting advice from lawyers, we're getting advice from everyone. But we're taking the borrower along on that journey with us. So they're learning and they're understanding where our questions are coming from, how they're getting answered, and they're there with us all the way through it. So I think that's one of the biggest things that comes into it there. Obviously you got the transparency with your fees. Why are you charging this? Why is it there? But I think it's about bringing the borrower along on the journey with you to get to a solution. And I use that word solution very carefully, because I think the alternative lending space we are solution lenders. We're not just providing a product, but we are trying to answer the question as to why. Why are we here? What can we do? How can we help you? And also, how can we protect ourselves too? So I think that would be one of the biggest things for me, is transparency, definitely.
Is there a sweet spot for you guys at Blackbird?
We take anything. Obviously, for lack of a better word, we're an asset lender. So we take real property and any sort of asset, any asset that's tangible. To be honest with you, we've looked at stamp collections. As I said before, we're looking at Bitcoin, but then we've got obviously your vehicles, your boats, everything like that as well. So if it's something tangible and holds value, we'll 100% look at it and try and help the borrower out where we can.
Brilliant. And so let's call it from a don'ts point of view, if there's people that are, firms on there with clients that are looking for solutions, you mentioned the word, what are some of the don'ts that they need to be aware of? There's obviously it's a big space, isn't it?
It's a huge space. Yeah, definitely. So I think some of the don'ts would be also, don't not follow your gut. If something doesn't seem right, or if something is not there, seek advice. Don't be afraid to take advice and listen to what people have to say, because there's usually there's a solution within the story that people have. So it's trusting your gut, making sure that you're well protected in yourself, and don't be afraid to ask for advice from other people. It's, as I said before, it's an unnavigated territory. There's so much to learn for everyone involved, but it's usually where there's smoke, there's a bit of fire. So trust your gut and make sure you're protected too.
Okay. Well said, mate. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just touching briefly on the actual experience in the Philippines. It was such a great eye-opening experience for Blackbird itself to find out how many different levels there are, especially what from Profit Master is doing, from James and CTC Group with the security, as well as Michael touching on that as well. And also Warwick, finding out more about not selling products, but promoting your service. I think it just ties in so nicely to what everyone was doing, but it was a fantastic experience for Blackbird to be a part of.
Yeah, well done, well said. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun. I know we focused a lot on our learning aspect, but we had a lot of fun along the way, and that's what those things are about, aren't they?
It was very fun, but very educational. So I think we can leave.
Good point.
Yeah.
Let me go to Mr. Partis, Michael Partis. Mate, it's always great to chat to you. I know you're back in Brizzy, I think. Are you back in Brizzy?
I am this week.
Okay, good. You have been a hard man to catch. So, so doing great things at Ashore Global Plus. Mate, I know you spoke about the subject of prevention is better than a cure. Are you okay to expand a little bit on that and maybe share your top 3 to 5 tips on greater cash flow?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the funny part about collections is the red-bearded stepchild of pretty much every business, isn't it? No one really wants to deal with it, but if you don't have it, you don't make the money you deserve. So what people have tried to do over the years is automate as much of that process as possible so they don't have to have that uncomfortable conversation with a client about, hey, when are you going to pay that invoice? Everyone's forgotten that collections is actually about relationships. So when I describe what we do in our business, a big part of that is relationship-based or intimacy-based collections, where we're not sending letters, we're not sending the lawyers out, we're actually picking up the phone and having a chat to them to see what's actually going on and try to eliminate what is this breakdown in communication that's occurred between the supplier and the customer in terms of those things. So that's a really big part of that. And a lot of our work that we do in the commercial space is off the back of a fairly substantial history that we have in consumer lending. And so we do a bucket load of work for the major banks and manufacturer financiers around those bits and pieces. So when it comes to these sorts of tips and how do we actually, especially coming up to Christmas, where people start to try and squeeze where their money is coming from and how long can I push payments out, this might not apply to a lot of the practices that have tuned in for this, but it's certainly applicable to a lot of their clients. And so there are some really easy ways how we can use people and that intimacy that we have with our clients and the relationships we have to make life a little bit easier for clients as they come up to Christmas. So the first one is going to sound really obvious on the back of that, but let's start talking to clients as soon as they hit 7 days overdue. Don't send them a text, don't send them an email, don't send them a letter, pick up the phone and talk to them, because clients can disappear from being really healthy. They can go from being really healthy to falling over in the space of hours. If you're looking at trade clients in particular, so for any trade businesses that the practices that have dialed in might have, they can be impacted so quickly. It's not funny. There was a national collapse last week, yet another one, where $60 million of unsecured creditors went from being sure and confident about what they were doing to not having their payments and the company gone overnight. Literally, and they went from healthy to not in 3 hours. So it was really what we need to do is at 7 days overdue, start picking up the phone and talking to people. If you're uncomfortable with doing that, find somebody who can help you do those sorts of things and do it at an hourly rate instead. Because our data tells us that for every 7 days an invoice is unpaid, your ability to collect it, so the business's ability to collect it without external assistance, falls by 50%. So every 7 days, your chances of collecting it by yourself fall by 50% for every 7 days is outstanding.
Interesting.
Don't offer the same payment terms to everybody. What we tend to do is go, hey, yeah, you can pay me in 14 days, and we apply that across the board. Different clients, well, different clients of clients have different risk profiles. What you need to do is assess what that risk profile is and offer them terms appropriate to the amount of risk you're going to have in your business as a consequence of selling to them. So you can have different terms for different people and still frame that up on a tailored set of terms and conditions. Tradies in particular and builders in particular are notoriously terrible at having a substantive set of terms and conditions so that they don't actually have something to defend themselves. They've taken it off other people, they've adjusted this, they've ripped it off the net, but it's not actually applicable to them. And so we see a lot of that when people are in trouble and they need to go and collect their payments, their terms and conditions aren't actually very useful to try and compel the client to pay, the debtor to pay. So having that set of tailored terms and conditions and setting their terms of trade specific for that client is really important. The last thing I was going to talk about is for all accountant practicing clients, they should join a credit reporting agency. Just having that sticker on the bottom of their invoice will improve payment performance by about 16%.
Wow.
So just having that tag at the bottom. So depending on it's really agnostic around which institution you use, which credit reporting agency you become a member of, but just having that sticker at the bottom sort of sends a message to the client as part of that process is, oh yeah, I better pay this one because they might put a default against me on my credit report.
Interesting stat, 16%. And does it cost people to become a member?
Yeah, there is a monthly cost in terms of those sorts of things. It is not substantial.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if you're getting a 16% better payment system, you're going to make your money back on that in spades. And then you need people like me less, which is
exactly
great.
right.
That's what you want, isn't it?
Well, it's an interesting one. And look, guys, we've got to wrap up in about 5-10 minutes and we'll get to questions soon. But I'm going to throw this at you. It's an interesting one because you see the accounting industry that, you know, we've all been a part of for a very long time, hasn't seemed to get this right for a number of years. And they carry this over and over again, but I'll bring in the legal side. I know James works with a lot of legal firms. It's almost like the legal profession has got this right, where they won't do any work until you put money into their trust account. Okay, so they seem to have got this right. So they probably don't have the issue that the accounting firms seem to have with carrying huge amount of debtors, with WIP. They've got huge amounts of lockup. Cash flow is poor because of that. Yet, so the question is, do you think we'll ever go to that stage, or does anyone have an opinion on, will we ever go to the stage where we tell our clients, you got to drop, for us to do this work, put $10,000 into our trust account, please. And then we'll give you an idea of what's going on with the WIP, and then we'll tell you when that 10 grand's gone.
I'm certainly seeing a lot more of that in the market, which is grand. I think that the biggest obstacle is the degree of intimacy an accountant has with their client. So because they're in the weeds and they're actually seeing what's happening in the cash flow, and they go, well, I know what's happening in their lives, they tend to sit back and go, well, there's no point picking up the phone and asking that question. And what I find in a lot of highly technical spaces is that the more technical you are, the more inclined you are just to want to concentrate on getting the work done rather than also maintaining the relationship with your client.
Yep.
So at the moment, the average debtor days for an accounting practice in particular is 58, which has come down a lot from about 10 years ago when it was averaging about 22 days. And so the fact that I'm seeing that improvement. So I don't think it'll take too much effort for us to bring that back to sort of 30 to 40 days in the next couple of years as people understand the concepts you're talking about, saying, hey, you need to pay up front to get access to these services.
Interesting, isn't it? Anyone else got any thoughts or comments on that?
Just a comment, Paul. It's a similar sort of set of circumstances, but not exactly the same. I just had that conversation before I came online, exactly here. So an outstanding debt, and I want them to do next year's tax return. And they said, no, not doing it until you paid all the past debt and paid for the estimated cost for this year. So it's not quite the same as what the question you asked, but very similar. So getting it all and say, no, we're not a charity here. We need to, and that's getting back to what Michael said, you know, the different arrangements. And some of their clients, they won't do the work unless it's paid in advance.
Yep.
I just had a look down the list of guests that were who've joined us today, and there's a number of insolvency practitioners in that group. And coming from that background myself, I'm well aware that we tend to get paid in advance.
Well done. Anyone else got a comment on that? We're going to quickly go to some questions. Guys, whoever's online, if you've got a question of any of the panelists, please throw it into the Q&A. Maybe just throw it out who the question is for as well, so I can direct it towards James, Morgan, Richard, Michael, or Warwick, or if it's to myself. But otherwise, Rich, as we're waiting for questions, we've hit 1:50. Well, it's Melbourne time. I don't know where you guys are in the country. It's confused me. Mate, any final comments from yourself?
Only this, Paul. We will be doing the conference again next year. As you know, we're already started the planning for that. The feedback that we got from the conference from the people who were there was very positive. There are a few guys who stayed on for a couple of days after. I think Michael Partis learned how to swim with sharks. He went over to Cebu. Some of the guys stayed up in Clark. Some of the guys got back to Manila and went around. So it was not only a chance to spend a couple of days really in good, close networking. And Morgan, I just touch on what you said there earlier. It was a group of friends getting together. We really did have a good time together. And then we were able to go our separate ways. So we've already worked out we're looking forward to having it again next year. And for those who are on board, those of you who are in this group today who've been there, I hope you feel the same. And for those of you who haven't been there, that you certainly consider coming along next year. And we'll have another great round of technical stuff. And we'll have another great round of good socializing and good hospitality.
Yeah, well said, well said. And I think for the firms that have got people over in the Philippines as well, they've got team members. Like I know, for example, the guys at Wheelhouse, they've got a couple of team members over there, and the ability to actually see them and talk to them and spend time with them, and again, priceless. And then you've got a group of other firms that just wanted to experience that. And I think what you've built over there, I think people were quite surprised with. It's like walking into a Melbourne office in St Kilda Road. It's no different. So the ability to see that live, I think, had an impact on everyone that went along. So yes, it's going to be fun next year. Bring that on, I say. Yeah. Any questions? There's no questions.
Paul, just one thing. Michael sold me on the benefits of Remarkable while I was over there. So there it is, Michael. I actually bought one. I got it last week. So we had some training sessions while we were over there over drinks to learn how to use the Remarkable. So I've now bought one. So
just on that, if I could just show you also my folder from the CT group.
Not coming up. Oh, you're like a magician, just disappearing.
Yeah, I don't know why, but anyway.
You got to get the camera right at the right angle, I think. But I agree, and I think that's the great part. Whether it's a funny thing that he said he did some training over a few drinks. Interesting. I think there was a lot of training going on, wasn't there? All right. What do we hit? 152. There's no questions. Look, to all of you guys that have joined us, certainly our panelists, thank you very much. To all of our guests that have joined us, thank you very much. Just a quick one in terms of, again, if you've missed this or you want to share it with team members or you want to go over the content again, this particular content will go into post-production and it'll be up on the Profit Master YouTube page probably the next 7 days. So if that's something that you'd like a copy of, please look out for it, or we'll send you a copy or whatever it may be. So there's no problems there. And I know team members might be watching this as well that you would like to share that with. So a lot of the stuff we've done, including the podcast series actually, is all up on the Profit Master YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us today. Again, if you want to be a part of my masterclass next week, please don't forget that one. Profit Master Global Outsourcing is one of my sponsors. So thank you, Richard Croaker, again. And we'll be talking about tech and cyber, and we'll be going into a lot more detail with Jamie, and another guy called Mark from Fishnet. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know in Melbourne, it's probably coming to an end. In Perth, it's just starting. So enjoy the rest of your day, and signing off till we see you next time. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Join us at Profit Master. Passionate people, passionate careers.